go down and flush them out.
Welcome to the Hearts of Men podcast, a journey into the depths of men's hearts where courage meets vulnerability and wisdom embraces integrity. In a world that often measures a man by his outer achievements, this podcast dares to explore what truly defines a man of character. We unpack the challenges and triumphs that shape men's lives, bringing to light stories of resilience, compassion, and unshakable faith. We believe that the heart of a man is a treasure trove of untold stories, powerful lessons, and profound wisdom. Through authentic dialogues and insightful discussions, we aim to unlock these treasures, one story at a time. So, whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or simply a moment of reflection, you're in the right place. Get ready to be challenged, inspired, and transformed. And now, to guide you through this journey of discovery, please welcome your host, a visionary leader and a true catalyst for change, Dwayne Wire, but we affectionately know him as the Mindset Coach.
Good evening. I know it said Dwayne Wire, and you can see Dwayne right to my side. You have Dwayne, the Mindset Coach, on here. You have also son of Timothy, better known as the Available Man. But this week, it is all on the hands of all three of us, but it's in my court. So I got the ball, and we're going to run with it. And we appreciate you guys for being here. We kind of switching things up, sharing the load. And Dwayne's on the road right now. And right now, y'all gonna have to bear with me because I'm, this thing, it got me going. I'm under Dwayne. I'm under coach's pressure right now. And I'm just trying to make sure that I don't fumble the ball he's entrusted me with. I'm appreciative of it. And I'm gonna get him back somehow, some way. But we appreciate you guys for coming in. And we just want to make sure that we give you quality service. As tonight we talked about raising standards, how boundaries can transform your life. And you see right next to it is fire, because this is a fire conversation that we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to bring out some things because people look at boundaries as good. People look at them as bad. But when it's all said and done, boundaries are some of those things that guide all of us. And I'm trying to remember, I'm walking in them big shoes, but outside of that, we've introduced, and we're going to go through and make sure that we recognize those of you that hold us down in the comments section. You hold us, you make valid points, you bring out the comments. We're talking about Michelle Ray. We're talking about Bernadette Simmons, Ian Ellis, the Bryant family, Black Love and Beyond. I love it. I love that. Nick D, welcome. Adrian Walthour, welcome. Crystal Everett. I already announced with Michelle Ray. I'm trying to go through, make sure I don't miss anyone. And if I did, charge it to my head, not my heart, because you guys know that you are part of us because you help stimulate our minds as we continue. Lisa Keys just came in. Appreciate you. And we ask that you continue to push that fire in the comment section, and somewhere along the way, we're going to grab some of that and bring it to the fold so that it can edify the conversation as we go. We're moving on to the introduction. Have you ever felt overwhelmed or drained because you're constantly saying yes to things that you don't align with your values or your priorities? If so, you're not alone. Many people struggle with setting effective boundaries, which is why today's conversation is so crucial. In this discussion, we're diving deep into the powerful impact that raising your standards and setting boundaries can have on transforming your life. We'll explore why boundaries are essential, how they are directly tied to your self respect, and most importantly, we'll provide you with practical examples and actionable steps you can start implementing right away. Make sure you watch the entire program because we're not just talking theory here. We're giving you real life strategies to help you set and maintain strong boundaries in all areas of your life. And as a special bonus, we've included a free resource in the show notes to help you along your journey to establishing effective boundaries. Be sure to download it and use it as a guide as you apply what you learned from today's conversation. So let's get started and on this transformative journey and raising your standards and living the life that truly honors your values. Fellas, you know how we go. First and foremost, when we're talking boundaries, I want you guys to, we all know what boundaries are, but give us your take on what boundaries are and the importance of them.
Since Coach is on here, I keep up our Sunday standard, and I'll go first. um, so boundaries. Boundaries are our. I start off by saying it's our personal preferences, right? Uh, things that rules or limitations that we set in our space. One to to help keep us comfortable in our spaces of relationships, and also to keep the respect level uh, there. When we don't set boundaries, we tend to get hurt, and we tend to break bonds and ruin friendships and relationships because of something that we find disrespectful. But if those boundaries are not set, uh, how am I supposed to know the things that you personally find disrespectful or uncomfortable in your space? I don't think we live in a day and age anymore to where, for the most part, we're taught the same things growing up. I noticed like there's certain things that I learned growing up that some people don't find respectful or disrespectful or what have you. Like at work, working in customer service, I ask for your paperwork or whatever, and I reach my hand out and you put it on the counter. I'm not gonna put it back in your hand. That's, but it's like certain things like that I believe that are not being taught anymore. We were taught that those small things are a level of respect and interactions. But so with that said, we have to set these boundaries so that those who we are in relationship and dealing with understand what we find as respect and disrespect.
Um, I so boundaries are interesting. First of all, can you guys hear me? Okay, you know how it is with these hotel internets. Um, so boundaries are an interesting thing. I think in our lack of understanding, what we tend to do is we tend to use boundaries as a thing to where I use against somebody else, right? So my boundary does not allow you to do this to me. And so, in essence, we'll go around life thinking that my boundary is more so like a fence, which I will touch here in a second. It's more so of a fence to keep people out. But in essence, it's more of a fence to protect what is in. Now, even though someone heard that, they may think I said the same thing, but I did not. Keeping someone out and protecting those within is not always the same thing. What I mean when I say I protect those that's within, my boundaries for me, they articulate standards of behavior. Therefore, as it pertains to boundaries, I do not allow myself to do this. I do not allow myself to do that. I do not allow myself to behave in this particular fashion. And if by virtue of connection and or relationship. If I have that standard for myself, then I automatically impose it on you until I learn what your boundaries are. So what does that mean? That means that if for me I do not use vulgar language, then I also will never use vulgar language towards you in that particular fashion. So it also is a metric for me to develop and grow, and it helps me to understand how I move and behave within this space. I tend to use the mantra of my boundaries, my yard, my work. It is no one else's responsibility to do work in my yard. Therefore, boundaries identify for me the things that I need to do to continue to improve my behavior characteristics, standards, and things of that nature. So boundaries itself, it's it's a interesting thing. And if we do not have a clear understanding of number one, what boundaries are, and how I actually implement them in our life, we would take it and turn it around and use it in the wrong direction, and we will use it kind of like a shotgun pointed at somebody else.
So boundaries. You said we usually take. I think I'm gonna paraphrase. To that we're looking at keeping others out, right?
I'd say in when we don't know, when we're in a kind of like an immature state, we use it as a defensive mechanism. It
Mhm.
doesn't. It's kind of like me teaching somebody how to treat me. I don't teach anybody how to treat me. I have a boundary that's established in my life. Therefore, because of that, I actually I do certain things within myself based upon what I observe in the environment. So I'm not teaching anybody how to do anything. But what I am doing is I'm removing myself from situations because the only person I can control is me.
Mm. See, and I was always taught that and that person he pronounced boundaries. He said boundaries. He learned it in elementary school. It was boundaries, and that's how he said it. And when he would talk about it, he said boundaries. And when I think is it a Greek word, proorizo? It's the when you see on the horizon what could come or how far you can go. And so when we're looking at our boundaries, when we're looking at where we can go, we all too often we don't limit the people who should have limits, which is ourselves. And I think that's going to come up in the conversation along the way, and we'll see how when we're limiting other people, telling them what they can and can't do with us, as you were alluding to, we don't place those same ones on us, which makes it an immature state that we're in. And I think we just gonna roll right into that first question. And what are some of the common misconceptions people have about boundaries?
For me, one of the ones I hear often is, you know, when people hear or see people that have boundaries, is that it's all about trauma or it's all about hurt. Um, can be in some cases, but I don't. But boundaries are not about trauma. I think sometimes boundaries are set up because we have learned from some things that have happened in our past that we might have had trauma from at one point in time, or probably do. But I believe that it comes sometimes from a learning experience. The older you are, sometimes I believe the less things you allow in your space, right? So when I hear common misconceptions, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. Is like, oh, you hurt somebody, hurt you. Oh, no, I don't want to be hurt, or I don't want these things around me. I don't want this type of behavior around my kids. I don't accept this. I don't. You're not going. I'm not going to do business with somebody. Like, these are the boundaries that I set that allows me to move forward and pursue that which I have set before me. And if our relationship are not in line with those things that I've set in place so that I can get to where I'm going, then so be it. But it's not all about being hurt or all about having trauma?
I think one of the biggest, one of the most common misconceptions people have about boundaries is that everybody have them. I think as adults, it makes sense that we have boundaries, but most people, especially in their young adult years, they don't necessarily know anything about boundaries because, in essence, nobody ever gave them a real, um, give them any detailed information in the space of relationships. So when it comes down to it, I think a lot of times they believe that boundaries automatically happen when I get into a relationship because you got yours and I may not have thought about mine in detail, but because you have boundaries or whatever that may, it's just going to automatically happen. Um, but no, it is something that you have to learn. Not only is it something that you have to learn, it is something that you have to implement, and it's also something that you have to practice when it comes down to it. I have to put them in place. I need to understand exactly what they are. I need to be ready to stand in. I need to be standing in preparation to defend them whenever they're violated, and I also need to adjust them according to the status of said relationship. So the common misconception is that everybody has boundaries.
Do we
Can I
automatically
add?
wait, I got you, Gabby. Do we automatically come with boundaries, or are they something that's trained or developed along the way?
Sounds like in a perfect world, the answer to both of those questions are yes. In a perfect world. But in the world that we live in, the answers to both of those questions is no, right? No one's training, no one's teaching, and no one's automatically implementing. Now, going back to the perfect world scenario, as I am growing up in my young adolescent years, those boundaries are taught to me in the interaction with other people. You know, me and little Jimmy on the playground, whatever the case may be, there should be some boundaries that are being taught at a younger age. Then, as I get older, those boundaries are being taught and explained and teach me how to implement them, so forth and so on, right? Even through everything that you go through as a young teenager, especially when you start looking at the relationships that you start developing, especially the ones that fail, right? What do your boundaries teach you in the space of a failed relationship? To go around blaming everybody else that the relationship failed? Again, what lessons are we teaching in the home? So that's kind of like what I'm talking about.
Yeah, similar answer to that question. I think boundaries should be taught uh, in parenting, right? I send my kids to school. Don't let no little kid hit you, or don't let don't this. You know, we have those things we teach our kids, and they should be healthy, right? They shouldn't. Sometimes we teach toxic boundaries that create toxic behavior. You know, I don't talk to no little bad kids. Well, how do you determine what kid is bad? You know, is that up to me, or are you going to tell me how every kid is bad because of the things you don't like? Do I get that you know, and that creates sometimes a shutdown in children because they think anybody who don't behave how my mama told me to behave is bad. You know, so I think that there are levels of boundaries, not that are automatic, but that ought to be taught at home as you're growing up. And then as you grow up, those things that you were taught, those boundaries you were taught to have evolve because you learn in relationships with people. You learn in communication with people how these things. Maybe I'm a little harsh over here, or maybe I'm a little lax over here. I need to not. I need to draw the line on this one right here, and be. You know, there's some things that maybe I should just hold everyone. You know, toe the line in my face. I shouldn't get into this type of relationship with this type of person. You know, so I learned some of these things along the way, but the core baseline of my boundaries ought to be taught to me in the home as I'm coming up.
And I love that because I was thinking about that because I know having daughters early, there were certain things that I had to teach my daughters about. You know, hey, no, you ain't sitting on a man lap. You ain't doing certain things. You know, close your legs when you're sitting with a dress. You know, you start off small when they're young so that you continue to teach as they grow. So when you see pitfalls that you may have fallen into, you can teach about that. You can talk about that. That way they can, because everyone will make their own decisions in life. But as you go along, the more information that you have, the better it is for you to make the best choices for your life. And that's why boundaries is one of those things where when we were coming up, you were taught about, they were going to school, they do little things. I remember in elementary school, they had a situation where the teacher would send you to the bathroom or something, and a stranger would come and say, "Hey, your mother told me to come and pick you up." While you already taught, "Hey, don't go with strangers. Don't go with strangers." And that was a boundary. If I don't know you, I don't care if you say, "You know my mother, you know my father." That's not the boundary that was taught to me. That's not the premise of someone that knows that I know that I can actually go home with. And that was one of those things that during the elementary learning, we were taught. Okay, we're going to question 2. How can you understand? Oh, I'm sorry. How can understanding the true purpose of boundaries help us align our actions and decisions with our core values and life goals? That's a mouthful. I might know.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Coach. Thank you. Now, Coach is waiting on me because he knows.
I'm being obedient.
Yeah. Oh man. So Coach said something uh, that maybe we knew, maybe we didn't know, but it definitely jumped out when he said it. That boundaries are to protect what's within, right? It's not for me to hold everyone else to you don't come around me if you don't dress this way. It's kind of one of those. I see what I allow in my space, or I see what things that I will and I won't do. You know, um, like for instance, I tell people all the time, uh, I got a promotion on my job, praise the Most High, right? That I don't qualify for, right? And I say that because I'm saying there are some technical things that I know that others may have had or may not have had, but I know, and I'm not gonna say that, every- but I know that there were some boundaries I set for myself when it comes to the workplace. I'm going to dress a certain way. I'm going to look. I'm not showing up with Jordans and jeans on. That's just not how I was taught the professional way of looking is. And even though we practice, I'm practicing right now because I wore a uniform all my life. But I know that this is a boundary for me. This is how I'm going to dress. This is how I'm going to carry myself. This is how I'm going to present myself. And so understanding that boundaries are set for me to understand what is healthy for me and for where I'm trying to go and what I'm trying to do. Those things it opens doors sometimes. Being able to conduct yourself in a certain way, regardless, those boundaries you set are regardless of what's going on around. It opens up doors. It opens up opportunities for relationships. It opens up opportunities uh, for promotion professionally, right? And even in the relationship aspect, it allows people who are like-minded with you to see you and and attract you. So that's to me, that's how it opens up those doors of relationship. Like, you know what? That brother carries himself like how I like carrying myself. That brother speaks how I like to speak. I was taught, my my mentors or my father or my uncles or my grandfather taught me to behave like that. And I see this brother talking like that. I found a friend, or I found someone that let me see. Let me talk to this brother and see what we got here. We might have a bond that we can build.
I like that. I really do. I think to this question, as it pertains to understanding the true purpose of boundaries, is just like understanding the true purpose of anything. Um, we all know it oh so well in our community because we have this tool that has been used for years as a multifunctional tool, but that tool only has one purpose. And that tool has been used as a screwdriver, it has been used as a crowbar, it has been used as all different types of things. You name it, that's the first thing we pull out. And everybody who heard me say these things, we automatically know that that tool is called a butter knife. But the purpose of that butter knife is one purpose and one purpose only: to spread butter. So every other way that we use it, we are abusing the butter knife. So when we use that butter knife as a screwdriver, as a crowbar, it's abuse. So when it comes down to the purpose of boundaries, understanding how and what boundaries are used for helps us to use them in the right way so that I can properly align this thing here, this exoskeleton with the inward man. That's the sole purpose of my boundaries from start. And when I can do that, or the closer I get with doing that, then that helps to validate, solidify, and strengthen relationships that I have with other people. But it requires me to get this thing here, this thing on the outside of me, in line with the thing that's on the inside of me. Because the thing that's on the inside of me desire to do the will of the Father. The thing that on the outside of me decides to do the will of the world. So boundaries, right? When we understand those purposes, when we understand the purpose, it helps me to get this thing in line with the internal man. But when we don't understand, just like the butter knife, we abuse it. So then we start using it against people. It almost becomes like a weapon we throw at people. I don't let people in my space who don't do this. You don't have to, if you don't do this, if you don't behave like this, you can't come around me. No, that's wrong. Again, your boundaries are for you to strengthen yourself, to straighten yourself up. Another person's character will show you whether or not you can be around them or not. I don't have to be malicious toward them. I can just create space between them. So that's the thing. Understanding the purpose of boundary helps me to behave in such a way that shows that I belong to my Father.
I love it because what you did, you ran right where I was going because we were going to bring up Miss Verlene McCoy's question. Is boundaries another way of saying a person to not be bothered or has a limit to their time? Because when we're looking at what you said, if I put up a fence, I'm responsible for the fence. Some people say, well, I'm responsible for my side of the fence. No, I'm responsible for the fence. That means what I allow in and what I give pushed out. Because whatever I allow someone to do to me, if I allow it, but yet I have a fence up, the fence is, why have a fence? Why have a boundary if you're going to consistently allow what you say you aren't allowing into your space? And with what Ms. McCoy is saying, it's not just about time, it's about everything, that your whole being. Because some people not only overstep with your time, they'll overstep and start planning things for you to do, and that's time based. But they'll start making sure that, okay, well, this is what I'm doing, and just include you. Or it's a lot of ways where people overstep simply because they don't either respect or know your boundaries. That's why your boundaries is your work. If you don't make it known, then other people will consistently overlook it. And if they push, you got to, hey, you stepping on some toes here, or you're trying to set a new standard for me. This is my standard where I stand, and that's it. I'm not moving left or right. It is what it is.
Can I say something, please?
Please. Yes.
We joke about it, but we're serious. For those of you who know, college football started last night. And so, for those of you who know us, and I don't want to speak for my brothers, but I'll speak for me. Everybody who knows me knows that when Georgia is playing football, don't call me. It's not me doing anything against you, though. That's the thing. It's different. When we say, oh, you won't let me call you, now what we're doing is it sounds more like a weapon. No, Georgia is playing. I have a no contact rule for me. And you can call me if you want to, but you're gonna get my personal assistant. I just want to be honest. And it's not against you, it's for me. So that's the thing. It is a boundary. When I start talking about what somebody else is doing, it's not like I take the fence at that point and throw it at them.
Right.
Because a lot of times that's what I hear. So instead of throwing the fence at them, I just simply say, hey, remember, it's Saturday. Georgia's playing. I don't talk to people when Georgia's playing. So I don't throw the fence at them. I just show them, say, hey, there's a fence. Remember that fence right there? That's all I'm doing. If you can't respect the fence, then it's time for you to leave the neighborhood. It's that simple. I think too many times what we do is we want to take the fence and pick the fence up and throw it at somebody just because they bumped into the fence. That's in error. We're always in error when we do that. It's just simply a thing of creating space. And so when we do that, we can get to the point of understanding that your behavior and my behavior do not align. And here's the best part about it. I am in compliance with you for the decisions that you make in your life. But that does not mean that I need to be in agreement with such a degree that I continue to open my life up to you while you do those things. So I wanted to kind of throw that out there because, and I could be wrong, but it sounds like what I'm hearing is that, you know, we're pointing at the other person about their behavior. That's their responsibility. That's their job. That's their work. I don't even have to talk to them about their work unless we're in relationship. If we're in relationship, now I'm an accountability partner. When you're in my space, now we need to talk about the boundaries that I have already, that I told you about already, but you're constantly jumping back and forth across my fence like you're playing hopscotch. And make no mistake about it, two people in a relationship, they still got boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I have a boundary when it comes to raising my kids. I will not raise disrespectful children. That's my boundary. That shapes how I talk to my kids, what I teach my children, what I allow them to say and do, especially when they're talking to me. You know, I play with them and I laugh at them, but they know I'm daddy, right? There's no confusion, right? Uh, but when I'm in public and I correct my children for something that I find disrespectful, now you think my boundary is a weapon against you when you come to me and you say, oh, she's just expressing herself. All right, and she's going to express it more respectfully. Now, respectfully, mind your children, and I'm a mind my, and I don't say that to people that often, but it's when you tell me to release my boundaries on how I raise, on what I'm raising my children to be, because you feel a child should be able to talk to their parent however they want. She can express herself, he can express herself, but find a more respectful way to do it. And so when you tell people stuff like that, that's when it looks like, oh, you just controversial. No, this is my boundary on what I will not raise. I will not raise disrespectful children. So don't tell me to allow my child to be disrespectful because you believe a child should be able to express himself. Express on with your sir and your ma'am and your, you know, like, but and those are reasons why people often look at boundaries like that, like in the sense of leave me alone, because you do have some people that are just contentious at all times. You know, they like to get into arguments. They snappy every time someone talks to them. It's not a boundary. That's just who they are, or they just not good communicators. They believe in their way or the highway. That's not what a boundary is. A boundary is my protection for my standards and my morals and my. I don't want to get too far, but that's all it is. That's how I look at it.
I love it, and like it says here, there is a link between boundaries and respect. It has to be, because if I'm consistently overstepping your boundaries or overstepping my boundaries, what I'm showing is a disrespect. And when I was in the military and I would have soldiers to come to me, you know, initially when you come to me, you got to come correct. You ain't coming, hey, Sarge, and all this flailing and stuff. No, it's a proper way we do this. But then when I see as a leader, like, hey, this is a serious situation, and this person really ain't about to break down. They bawling, crying, and they some relative may have passed away, or some situation has them up in arms where everything is going scatterbrained in their mind. So now I'm not so concerned about whether they're in the proper position. What I want to do is bring them to a position to where now they can relax a little bit and tell me exactly what's going on so we can rectify the problem. That's where that link between boundaries and respect kind of you understand the respect part, but I have to allow some type of brevity when it comes to not what's being said or the act, but the posture. I don't know if Dwayne, you ever came across anything like that, because we've been in situations where things happen and the soldier and you go out almost out the window, but you got to reel that back in and let them know, hey, we gonna keep it here, but let's talk. Take them offline or something.
Yeah, definitely. Even when, like, to these, this particular day and age, when I'm teaching lieutenants, captains, whatever the case may be, one of the things we talk to them about is counseling, and one of the biggest ones is, when a person goes through a traumatic event, like, say, for example, they lost a parent or a loved one or whatever that looks like. And one of the things I try to share with them every cycle is that that's not the time for you to pull a rank, and try to stand out and with your chest and tell them to come to the position of attention. Listen, I can appreciate the fact that you are an officer and you're over me. But when I am going through a traumatic event and you try to put me in check like that, it's about to be a very interesting day for you, because I was a grown man when I walked in the door. I'm going to be a grown man when I walk out. And so it's just trying to help them to understand that that's the time that they need to understand it. They need to exercise empathy, understanding, and care in relation to what the soldier is going through. Don't demand respect, right? But understand what this individual is going through and respect that thing, so that you can kind of help them and walk them through that particular situation. So just another way of saying the exact same thing. So, yes, sir.
So I mean, you a leader on your job.
Man, every day. I deal with soldiers every day, and every day I get a soldier. And believe it or not, there's certain ranks that I normally don't have a problem with. It's normally either young privates or senior NCOs who think their rank work on my side of the desk. And so, and every now and then, because I know, especially if their soldiers are in front of them, they're going to keep beating their chest. So every now and then, I do have to go, hey, son, let me holler at you, because the conversation I want to have is not going to go down the lines of professionalism. So let's talk on the side. So, and that what that does, at least for me, it gives me a chance to put myself back in check to the boundaries of who I say I'm going to be. So when we step aside, I tell myself to calm down.
I like that when we talk about military, but everybody's on here not in the military, and we all know we have some family members, and I can say, like, some parents, some cool aunties, some cool uncles that will sit up and overstep and say and think that, oh, since you're their child or whatever, that they can just do whatever. Whatever. They just try to throw your little boundaries out the window and say, oh, they with me. And that's one of them where I don't know. I haven't been in. I think I've been in that position with a parent before, but never like a sibling who say, "Oh, I'm the auntie," and they can do it. They don't have to call me. They don't have to say yes, ma'am, to me, and that make me old. But you have that parent that'll come along, and they used to. I can't say it. That's why they kick my. I can't say certain things on these platforms because they'll kick your information off. But they will strike you with rage, vengeance, and furious anger. That's from Pulp Fiction. But they will tan your hide a little bit when you were young, but now everything they do, they try to save them from it. They trying to save it. And you get in that position where now it's family. So that's where we're going to walk into that next question with how can we effectively communicate our boundaries to others in a way that fosters mutual respect? Well, let's hear from Coach. How, with
Which
this one,
which one?
how can we communicate our boundaries?
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. Um, Assertively. I think a lot of times because we exist in a space to where I have to be super concerned about how someone else feels. A lot of times what we do is we take that concern, and I want you to listen closely to what it is I'm saying and don't assume I'm saying one thing over the other. I have to consider the fact that you may assume a thing before I'm finished saying what it is that I want to say, or establishing a boundary, or articulating to you what my boundaries look like, whatever that looks like. It's not saying that we express them maliciously. Let's move the extremes off the table. We're not talking maliciously, and we're not talking extreme versions of passivity. Okay? But it's almost like people today have to walk on eggshells to have an honest conversation with somebody else. In fact, to be honest, run the risk of damaging another person's feelings because their ego really stands in between me and that other person. So a lot of times what ends up happening is that people fear expressing their boundaries to somebody else because the response may be that, oh, well, if this is the case, then what is it that you're really trying to say? No, I'm telling you what my boundary is. That's it. There is no secondary or tertiary effects behind it. I am just telling you what my boundary look like. This is a remote, nothing more, nothing less. Don't add to, don't take away. This is all it is. And I think the issue is that because we live in a world to where assertive communication is only talked about but not expressed, then it is very difficult to effectively communicate our boundaries in a way that fosters mutual respect. It is okay to be direct with adult human beings. I want to say that part again. I want to say it loud for the person in the back because it's almost like you have to talk to adults like they're children these days. It is okay to be direct with an adult human being. If they choose to take offense, and I know that I did not say anything offensively, it was only because that person made that decision on their own accord. That may identify something that's going on with them, but definitely not with me if all I'm doing is expressing the simple fact that when George is on TV, I'm not answering my phone. If that hurts your feelings, then I'm sorry, your feelings just gonna be hurt. It is what it is. And I think that's just where the issue is because again, when we're you want me it's like you want people to be honest with you, but you really don't want them to be honest with you. You only want them to be honest to such a degree that it strokes your ego, right? Excuse me. So I think that's the answer. The answer is you effectively communicate your boundaries assertively, and assertively is not disrespectful.
Um, yeah, this is why we try to go before the wordsmith over there. Now, because now, because sometimes his sounds so good, you forgot what yours was. You think yours was what he said, and you're like, yeah, yeah, I'm gonna reset now. But but I I would say clearly, and then my second point to it was respectfully, and it kind of led a little bit into what Coach said. That's why I said that plan, uh, because I think the worst thing we can do is not be clear and not stand strong in what we're saying, because sometimes we believe that we are running the risk of offending people by setting our boundaries. I don't really care. Like as far as my boundaries go, and it's not that I don't like you or that I want to be disrespectful or whatever the case may be. The bottom line is you have your boundaries and I have mine, and I'm going. And I truly believe this. If someone is offended by me having a boundary, that shows how you view me. Because in my mind, if you don't respect, if I'm not allowed to have a boundary in your eyes, then to me, you see yourself above me, and so you're not capable of respecting my boundaries because you feel like I'm beneath you, and or you, and so you are able to just tread however you want to tread, right? I and that I mean this wholeheartedly, but respectfully. Even when I'm at work, I work at the front counter, and every now and then, some people believe that their position or whoever they think that whoever they are is more important than my workspace. So they'll just come around my counter and come about, let me ask you a question. Yeah, you can ask it from the other side of the counter, and I tell them like that. You can ask me from this side of the counter. Come on back around. And when they go, oh, no, it's just a quick word. See now in your mind, what I'm doing doesn't matter, or my space, or my boundaries, or my work. You're so in your head. You're so high above me that you can't even have a true conversation. So when you ask me this question, am I going to be able to answer it for you? Because you've already put me beneath you.
Yeah. And some people will try to kind of force you in a position with their feelings or with intimidation. So that's why going to where we're going next, when we talk about the role of boundaries in enhancing mental and emotional well-being, we're going to that first question. How do boundaries contribute to the reducing stress and reducing stress and anxiety? Because you can just read and throw it out there. So if you do this and they don't do that, but it's more nuanced than just saying it, than just, okay, just do it. So give me your take on this. Because it can be stressful.
I like joking with you, Coach. You can go first. You just can't be that articulate and that intellectual when you do. Uh, how can boundaries contribute to reducing stress and anxiety? It lit to me because I'm thinking about the things that cause me stress and anxiety. I guess uh, I would say it reduces the level of unknown variables in how you deal and how you move. Um, Especially if you have a circle to where respect is mutual across the board concerning each other's boundaries. It kind of reduces to me that level of unknowns. When I when I send my child to school, knowing not to speak to strangers, like you talked about the stranger thing, not to speak to strangers, to be careful of this. If I didn't introduce you to them, they can't pick you up, or. And I know that they are dealing and operating well in those things that I set, those boundaries that I have set and taught them. I'm not that nervous about sending them out to school because I understand the boundaries that they were taught and they operate within that. I am less worried about someone trying to grab them or someone using them as a fair target or what have you, because these boundaries that I have placed in mine and my children's lives are here. My apologies. uh Uh, are are here to keep us safe. They're here to keep us protected. So that's how I look at it when I hear this question, to reduce stress and anxiety, keeps me from unknown variables.
I love it. I love it. When it comes to boundaries help me to relinquish this thing called control. A lot of times we stress over things because we cannot control the outcome. Anxiety is simply a concern about an unwanted future event. So when I don't have these boundaries, these measures of control for me, I now move in such a space to I want to control others and things that might be in close proximity of my life. Therefore, boundaries allow me to release any version of control that I have in my life and have zero concern about anything outside of me. It is what it is. That's pretty much it. This person getting elected, okay, it is what it is. They talking about doing this right here. It is what it is. What can I do to control any version of the outcome? Nothing. Good. It is what it is. That's what boundaries allow me to do. Why is that significant? Because once I relinquish control, I'm not stressing over anything. Like, let's be honest. I love Georgia football, but if they lose to Clemson, I'm not Kirby Smart. I don't get paid $8 million to coach a football team. It is what it is. I'm gonna be a little disappointed for about 30 whole seconds, but then I'm gonna move on. Now, people who know me know I shut down for the rest of the day. Don't call me, don't text me, no nothing. I'm joking, but I'm not. But that's really what happens, though, right? If we get to the point of relinquishing control, then you have no worries when it comes to you have no worries, you have no stress when it comes down to things in the future. If you keep your eyes focused on what he told you to focus on and not what you want to focus on, then anxiety goes way down. So that's the thing. Boundaries contribute to reducing stress and anxiety because it helps me to relinquish control. Because the only person that I can control is me.
Yeah, I agree, and I love it. I thought we were gonna get the mods in here. I thought we had some spam going through the chat. I seen somebody say "Go Dogs," so I thought Miles was gonna kick them up out of here. I'm just kidding. What's going on,
Man,
Steve?
leave my brother alone, man. Leave my brother alone. What's up, Steve? Good to
Feeling
see
it.
But what? See, you ain't got a team. Don't bring Syracuse in. We can't talk about that. But when we talk about this topic, I'm gonna think we gonna talk junk later. And we're talking about manipulation, and we're talking about reducing stress and anxiety. We have parents. I remember certain people would be like, they'll do the little passive aggression saying, "Oh, I'm not coming over there because you don't let people smoke in your house," and don't and won't. So what's the problem? I mean, so passive aggressions. Some people will allow that to say, "Well, I want them to see their grandkids, and I want them to see the kids, and all this other stuff," and then they will go off and tear their boundary down and allow that stuff to happen in their house because they're afraid to stand on their boundaries because it hurts someone else's feelings. I think when your boundaries are set, it's not a concern about someone else's feelings because it's not for them to prosper. It's for them not to inflict anything on you. So we have to know that when we're looking at the stressors, the stress is on you because it shouldn't stress somebody else to not do something in your space because it's your space. And it's too easy just to walk away, turn around, go across the street, or not come into your space. And that's where I think that some of us are too fickle or too soft that we won't stick to our boundaries. We won't stick to what we know to be right. We'll just say, "Well, they only here for a weekend," or "Well, that's mama," "Well, that's auntie," or "Well, whomever." Dwayne, he got his hands going. He's ready for this one. Oh, yeah. You got something? Got it? Go ahead, guy. Oh, he said, he ain't coming. But yeah, so and we also have manipulation from spouse, either side, where you will have a boundary, and yet they keep chopping at it. They keep chopping at that wood, trying. I know I ain't called you that. Life did. No, I'm just kidding. But
It'd be on the slant. Oh my goodness. Hey, so shout out to Steve, man. Good to see you, brother. Always good to see you. And as you already know, man, you're welcome to this channel every time you show up because you're a dog fan. Now, but seriously, I got love for that brother, man. We go way back. Adrian, I think this is an awesome question, but in the context of the question, I already gave you the answer. I don't establish boundaries for people. I establish boundaries for myself. That's the why. The reason why I feel that way is because I'm really trying to control somebody else by putting boundaries on that person. That's why you feel that way. it's overwhelming to control something outside of yourself.
I, I was gonna say something similar because when I think about if I'm putting boundaries on someone that I never had boundaries on, I'm putting those boundaries up because of what they did. And so in my mind, they're going to take it as if I'm targeting them with this new boundary. Well, probably because I am. Um, so I will go back. I will go back and look at my purpose of setting that specific boundary. You know, am I doing it to keep that person from doing this thing, or is it because here's the thing: some people just might annoy us with this one thing. You know, Roland gets hyper annoyed if he hears chewing or rattling or tapping or any if he hear anything other than the sound that in his head. I'm messing with him, but not you know because he do have his tick. Now, if he said, "Yeah, I have a boundary. People who got ADD can't be around me. You know, if you tap, you can't be around me." I'm like, "Wait, I tap. You set that boundary up specifically to control me, to keep me from having tics. I don't know if I have ADHD, but I do know I have to hear noise, or my anxiety gonna go through the roof. Uh, but that's me, and I can't be mad at other people because they like silence. And you get what I'm saying? So it go back and look and say, am I doing this because I'm targeting and that's why it's affecting me, or is it really something that I need to establish in my life? That's why I'm setting these boundaries.
Now, I think as we learn and grow. As we learn and grow, we tend to have more boundaries. We tend to have more limits of what we will take, what we will allow, and what we will give. So, whereas when you were younger and the family think you were in the military, so you rich and you just giving. So now it's like, hey, you got it. I may have it, but I have plans for it. So when you set a boundary for self, it's not for anybody else. I'm not setting a boundary saying I'm not giving a specific person this money because I have to have, I have a heart and I acknowledge that certain things may trump what I'm thinking right now, what I'm trying to do if it's an emergency. But that's what an emergency fund is for. But I'm like, I think Coach said, the boundary is for me. So I'm not setting the boundary to offend you. I'm setting it to keep my headspace correct and to keep me elevated to where I'm trying to go. Because if I'm trying to be a certain type of individual and I have certain standards now, whereas no, I probably didn't have them back then, but now I do, I can't allow you to confront me and put me back in a space that I left. See, when they do that, then they're saying they aren't ready for me to move for them. But if I'm the person that's moving forward, I'm moving for me. So if they can't understand that, that's where I know we aren't necessarily in this relationship together because you want me to move how you want me to move. So when you allow people to manipulate you, that's an immaturity on your part as well because you're succumbing to the pressures of other people when they don't live for you and you don't live for them.
Let me, if I may, um, because I want to make sure that it's clear to everybody. Boundaries are for me. It's for it is what I have established in my life, and they give me my left and right limits of behavior. For the people that I'm in a relationship with, their boundaries look very similar to mine. So I don't have to put boundaries on Roland or Gaddy or whatever the case may be because of twofold. Number one, that's not my job. My job is not to put boundaries on them. And number two, they understand boundaries, they respect boundaries, their boundaries look similar to mine. And because they have very similar boundaries, they will not behave in a particular manner around me because they believe that the boundaries they have are the same boundaries that I have. And they don't have to be identical, but they can be very close. I think again, even in this conversation, because you hear this a lot in the space of, and I'm just going to say male, female interaction relationship for the sake of clarity, right? Um, I am not like you hear it, when it comes down to gender roles. Let's use that one. Okay. Gender roles in relationship, hot button topic that a lot of people tend to talk about. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. You need to do this. You need to do that. Stop. All of that is in error because here's the deal, my responsibility is my behavior. I should have never married a person if they don't have boundaries set up for their lives that govern their behavior. So now, when I do so and I try to put boundaries on that person, what I'm doing is manipulating that person either directly or indirectly. I mean, direct manipulation is me telling them this right here or else, right? Indirectly is me using my emotions against them when they don't do what I want them to do. So that's what ends up happening. The issue here in that particular space is that none of it is healthy and none of it will work. So the question that we have to ask ourselves is this feeling that I'm experiencing trying to tell me something about this situation that I'm dealing with? Or do I focus on the backside of the title that I gave this feeling, fear of rejection? Is it really a fear of rejection, or is it more important to identify the feeling that exists there minus the label? And I think a lot of times what we do in spaces, we put a label on the thing. And Adrian, this isn't specifically directed at you. This is for everybody, right? I think a lot of times what we do is we hyper focus on the label and miss the fact that the feeling is trying to tell you something. The feeling is only telling me something about me, not about you. Let me say that part again. My emotions only tell me something about me, not about you. It doesn't matter what you did. It's telling me that I am not in congruency with the thing that you did. Therefore, I need to change my posture, remove myself from their environment, not talk to this person again, delete their number out my phone, whatever that looks like. So again, these things we have to understand. My emotions are for me. No one cares about my emotions but me. I'm just being transparent. I'm sorry. And again, it's not directed at anybody. I want to make sure I'm saying that. No, this is a common phrase. No one cares about my emotions more than me. I don't care what anybody tell you. They tell you that because, like I said earlier, we live in a world that's hyper focused on how the other person is feeling. Okay. So when it comes down to how I feel, I'm the only person that cares. Therefore, I'm the only person that's going to do something about it. What am I going to do? I can't do it against you because if I do it against you, that's called manipulation. Therefore, I need to look in the mirror and say, what do I need to do different so that I don't feel this way again? Because how I feel is an indicator that something is wrong. I think that has to be the thing. If we do not pay attention to the feeling, but focus on the label that we give the feeling, then we're going too far. We're going down the rabbit hole.
Okay, there we go. The next question is, what are the signs that indicate a lack of boundaries is negatively affecting your emotional well-being? And that's exactly where you were going. So I don't know if you want to continue to push there and answer this question, or there you go, Gaddy. We're giving you this. You got it.
Oh, I was taking it anyway. I was just gonna talk. No, sorry. Because I know this one right here. He's gonna come with it. So I want to read it again because I'm making sure I'm answering it right. I'm thinking right. What are the signs that indicate that a lack of boundaries is negatively affecting your emotional well-being? Well, when you're constantly being when your emotional balance is constantly off because of what's going on in your life. Sometimes we look at life, we're like, why is my life in turmoil? Why are things spiraling out of control? Well, part of it can be because there is no boundaries, there's no chaos, there's no standards for how you walk, and that creates chaos, right? When we talk about he's not the author of confusion, well, he also says all things in decency and in order. That's because he's not the author of confusion. If you do things in decency and in order, if you have an order set for your life, a boundary set for your life, it'll keep chaos at bay. Not that things won't arise in your life, not that things won't pop up, but when you always in your emotional high because this is going on, I got this going on, I got this going on. Oh my God, how did this happen? Oh, how did I forget about this? How did I slip this? And it's like, how do I get a handle on my life? You have to set some controls in your life. You have to set some boundaries in your life that helps you operate in a certain way, right? So like I can't be like, how did my bills get out of control? And I have no way of tracking what I paid and what I still need to pay before I went on this shopping spree. Well, you didn't set yourself a boundary for your life financially. And now I'm on this emotional high because I don't know how I'm gonna pay these bills, how these kids gonna eat. I know y'all remember the old sayings, right? But a lot of times now, some of us we're living better than how Mama lived, and we still crying the same cry that Mama cried. How we gonna pay these bills? How to keep these bill collectors off our tail? Well, we have to set up some boundaries on how we will and will not handle our finances, and that'll keep you from the chaos. And so for me, when that's how I look at it. If I can't balance and regulate my emotions because there's so much going on in my life, maybe there's a lack of balance. Maybe there's a lack of standard.
I think the answer to this question is found in the previous question. When you look at the lack of boundaries and how is it negatively affecting my emotional well-being, well, the previous question talked about stress and anxiety. There it is. When I don't have boundaries, I will experience stress and anxiety because I'm trying to control people, control situations, and so forth and so on.
Definitely. And I think part of that it can show in low self esteem. Lack of boundaries. Now you have low self esteem because you allow people to use you as a walking mat, or they just walk all over you. So your self esteem is, well, they're gonna do what they want to do anyway. Or like Coach was saying, that anxiety and depression go hand in hand. When you're looking at anxiety and you always worried about something, now when you're worried about it, it builds up. So you become a person that's comfortable almost in that depressive state because you can navigate there because the expectations are low, or you just have difficulty expressing yourself emotionally. And when you're either hypo or hyper emotional, that's a sign also. Because when you're hypo, you just everything gets under your skin, everything gets on your nerves. Whatever another person does, it just blows you up. Or it's the where nothing matters, where it's almost like, man, are you emo? Like nothing matters at all. So you tend to think like, man, why is it a cloud over your head all of the time? And some of us may get to the point that we're people pleasers, where we don't have boundaries. We didn't set boundaries. So anytime someone calls you, oh, I got to do this. Oh, I got to. Now you're wearing yourself thin and you're running around town for everyone else instead of accomplishing the things that you need to do because you didn't set boundaries. You didn't say, hey, when George is on, don't call my phone talking about what happened on this and that and the other. It's the same way with me. They know when Michigan is playing, hey, come on. That's why I got a phone. That's a TV. Because if I'm out of pocket, I can just turn it on my TV because there's something that I chose to do. And it's like, I'm not going to allow trivial things to stop me from having my boundaries set, saying this is what I choose to do with my time, whether you like it or not. You don't have to agree with it. And it was answered in the first. And that's why I told you, Coach, you were running right into that question in your last answer. And I'm like, man, he already answered this question. And I want to see how it definitely goes. Let's see. I think we had some added chat members. Sally Francis, welcome in. Appreciate you. And she came in already on it, agreeing and commenting and making sure that she's a part of the chat. In the chat, y'all on fire. Y'all keeping it going, because as I'm over here and then I look in the chat, I'm like, man, they over here on fire too. It's like y'all not having a different conversation. You're adding and edifying to the conversation that we're having, because the talk is stimulating even from the chat. And it's like, man, it's definitely one of those where, as always, the chat brings fire. The chat makes sure they are on it. And you can tell that this is a mature chat, because the mature people don't have knocks on everything. What they do is have input where it's valued input and can add to the conversation. And I love it. And going to let's see, our next question, number 3. In what ways can healthy boundaries improve relationships and contribute to a stronger sense of emotional well-being, both for ourselves and those around us?
You want me to go first on this? All right, I got to make sure I'm clear to go. In what ways can healthy boundaries improve relationships? First and foremost, I want to go back to where I started from. Boundaries give me the blueprint on how I need to behave. Therefore, if I have a clear understanding of how I am to govern myself, right? Again, my boundaries, my yard, my work. If I have a clear depiction of how I am to govern myself, and this person that I'm in a relationship with, they have a clear understanding of how they are to govern themselves, then there is no possibility of us intentionally or maliciously disrespecting one another, because boundaries are rooted in respect. First, respect for self, first, then respect for others. So the respect that I give comes from the well of the respect that I possess. So in that space, in that area of clear understanding of self governance, now self governance actually drives the way that we relate to one another. That being said, you now have an environment that is free of manipulation, it is free of control, it is free of stress, it is free of anxiety. And when you find yourself existing in an environment that is free of all of the things that causes you to sickness and dis-ease, then the relationship itself can flourish because it is now rooted in good ground.
I love that, Coach. For me, I'm saying I must first truly understand what my boundaries mean. I think sometimes we say things or we set boundaries based upon what we heard or what we see in other people, or I may just look at Coach and I think that these are his boundaries, so I'm setting them because I want to live like Coach. I want the peace I feel like he has, or what have you. And I don't really truly understand why these boundaries are important. What happens when I don't have understanding is I don't recognize the signs from the people I get into a relationship with that these boundaries are going to be crossed, that these boundaries are going to be, or you're going to push me to break my boundaries. Because, and then sometimes it waits until you get into those relationships and things begin to boil over because you look at yourself and you don't recognize yourself concerning who you were trying to become. And you're blaming the people you're in relationship with rather than blaming yourself for allowing these things in your space. Um, so when I look at how can they improve relationships, well, one, if when I truly understand my boundaries, it helps me improve who I get into a relationship with and how I get into a relationship. I don't, how I tread carefully or whether I move fast. Like your boundaries will cause you to see what you are placing around yourself. So That's one of the things I would say is like when we're placing these boundaries, let's not just do them because they sound good. Let's not just say I'm not going to do this because it looks good, but understand the why. When I say I'm following the word of the Most High, so one of my boundaries is I'm not going to eat pork, and I'm not going to touch the carcass of it. Why? Because somebody told me that it's not good, or because I understand why the Father told us to stay away from it, and that'll cause me to not only will it cause me to have understanding, but it'll help my ability to be consistent and dedicated to these things because of my understanding. That's
See, and I like that you went there because I'm one where if I have a conviction, it's my conviction. So what I won't do is push my conviction on someone else so that they have to live it out. Like, like I know me and you, we ain't eating no pork. Too easy. But I'm not up here tripping. If I see somebody else eating pork, I'm not, oh, look at you, you this, that, and the other. And hey, it is what it is. I'm looking at it like, man, I remember when, because I say, hey, that's what Eve got off the tree. That's what I say, and that's what I'm sticking to it, because bacon that's that fruit for me. But I think that when we're looking at the healthy boundaries and how they can improve our relationships, it allows people to know where you stand, know what you'll stand for, and also know that that's like when I used to go home all the time because of my past, they knew that I didn't do and I wasn't doing any drugs, anything. So they'll be passing this, puff, pass or whatever. Then they'll be like, oh, Ro, don't do that. I don't have to I don't have to justify anything. They understand that's a boundary I have. You do what you do. It's not what I want for my life. And I'm not judging you in that. And that's what people would, when they respect your boundary, it's a healthy boundary for me because there's no peer pressure. There's no anxiety. Oh, I might want to do. No, because I understand that the people that I allow in my space are people that's going to respect my boundaries, going to respect my fences that I've built up.
Now, um, another perspective of looking at the same thing, because I don't place people into place. I want to make sure I'm saying that. I do hear that a lot. You put people. No, you don't. You don't put people anywhere because of what you just now said. Like they have their own decisions to make for their life. I respect whatever decision that they make. So I don't place them anywhere. Their behaviors place them where they go. That's what ends up happening. When I say that I place people in certain positions, it gives the impression that I get to manipulate them to be what I want. Therefore, I can go around and say, hey, God told me that you're my next wife. Really? God told me that you're my next husband. Seriously. I think he would tell me first. You see what I'm saying? So we can't put people where we want them to be. That's not how life works. People's behavior will tell you where they're trying to be, and then you let them be there unless they're trying to be in a space to where your boundaries do not allow. Where your boundaries do not allow. That's the thing. So again, my boundaries, it controls proximity. You don't get too close if you don't respect my boundaries. In fact, I will keep you at a distance, not because I am controlling you, but I am respecting me. So more importantly, I always tend to say that my boundary again connects me in my first primary relationship. That's not you. I love you guys dearly, but you guys are not my first primary relationship. So when we start taking boundaries and say it's for other people, that's not accurate. My boundaries are for me because it keeps me in line with him. It doesn't make me put them anywhere. They can choose to be where they want to be at. They want to come close, that's cool. Their behavior must now show up. That's what your boundary does. Boundaries help you to understand whether or not your behavior is lining up with what's coming out your mouth. Once you see your own behavior in relation to what it is you're saying, you now have a decision to make. Am I going to be the authentic version of myself and make my behavior line up with what I say, or am I just going to say what I want people to hear and then do what I want to do, and at the end of the day, give them time and space to figure it out? So that's the thing. Boundaries are for me to learn about me, not to use against people. They got their own boundaries they're trying to figure out. And most of them can't figure it out because they've never heard of it before or no one ever taught them how to use it. So what you have is you have boundless existence between people. And when there is no law in a land, it is chaos.
You caught me on that one, because I was like, man, did I say I got
No,
you. I got
it's
you.
it's not what you said.
Right, I got you.
It's what I believe some people hear when we say
Yeah.
certain things.
Right. Yeah, because, and I think that's why it's like being in an automobile. If I have an automobile and I'm in the driver's seat, I control everything in the, it's like when you're in the military, control everything within the limits of my post. These are my boundaries. I set the standards are already set, because, and now I adhere to them because this is what I'm going to do. I think what we do is, when we allow other people, other outside entities to either get us here or manipulate us to move forward or move backwards, then we are putting ourselves in a space to where it's a ebb and flow. It's like a roller coaster almost, to where we're up and then we're down, and that's not healthy for us or the people on the outside of the boundary, because they never know what to expect. So this conversation is definitely a good one, and I think we need to, for ourselves, look at where we are emotionally with those people in our lives that don't like our boundaries, don't consider our boundaries, don't appreciate our boundaries. And then look in the mirror and ask ourselves, why do we continue to allow that to happen? Because if I'm allowing someone to continue to push, continue to jump over, continue to whatever it is, to go outside of my limits or push me outside, then it speaks to me as well as it speaks to them. That's why we have to make sure that those people that we allow around us are enhancing our fighting positions and not tearing them down. Because what we do is we allow people in our spaces and they tear more down, where we're trying to build up, they're tearing down because it doesn't suit their need, doesn't suit their walk. So I love this conversation. And this is a conversation that makes me look in the mirror and say, dog, you set this boundary. You said you had this boundary, but you showed that it wasn't a boundary at all. It was just a boundary in theory. You get it? Thank you. No, I was just asking.
Nah, because Coach over there hitting home runs and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, you and Coach, Josh. That's taking all the meat off the bone. I'm joking.
No, man, y'all hitting home runs. That's that modesty thing, because whenever you speak, it adds value. Whenever the chat speaks, it adds value, because I'm listening, and the smallest thing, you may not take it to be a major, but it is something. So it's like Joe Madison used to say, I'm gonna put it where the ghost can get it, meaning that the ghost get it off the ground. So I ain't gotta reach high, I ain't gotta climb a tree. It's right here so that anybody and everybody can get it. And when you place things like that, it makes it so, it's like, man, I can receive that because it's easily gathered, it's easily added to my toolbox. So now that it's here, I can make sure that, it's something for me to use, something for me to better myself. So definitely. Miss Verlene McCoy said, can there be unhealthy boundaries that can make you vulnerable?
Sure. The question I would ask is vulnerable to what? I don't think vulnerability is a reflection of healthy versus unhealthy. I think when it comes down to vulnerability, it's a thing that's achievable. I think when we start talking about boundaries, relationships, emotions, whatever, we can look at healthy versus unhealthy. Does it yield an outcome? Sure. An unhealthy boundary will yield an unhealthy relationship, which will yield an unhealthy outcome, which will yield unprecedented emotions in the future. You will live in a place of anxiety. You'll live in a place of stress because, at the end of the day, the person isn't doing what you want them to do. But I'm being vulnerable because I'm sharing how I feel with them. But I just also told you that nobody cares about how you feel more than you do. That's the piece I add to it. I know somebody didn't like when I said that, but that don't make it not true. Um, so I think we like to use the term, and I know you're not doing this, but I'm just making a blanket statement now. I think in the space of a world who is hyper emotional, we like to sling the term vulnerability around as though it's like, going to the store and get penny candy. Like vulnerability is a thing, but we have to understand what we're being vulnerable to, what we're being vulnerable about, and the most important part is for what purpose are we trying to be vulnerable. So healthy versus unhealthy is a thing, but then again, what is the goal? What are we getting after? If I'm just expressing myself at the depth of how I really and truly feel, what is the desired outcome? Because again, I can use my emotions to manipulate anybody I want to, especially if I feel that I'm entitled to the thing that I'm trying to get you to understand and believe.
Absolutely. I'm gonna say yes, um, because kind of like the variables that I'm missing, right? Like Coach kind of brought up. You know, what is the boundary and what am I being vulnerable to? So the possibility is there, um, but I think that goes back to kind of pretty much all the pieces we discussed in this conversation. You know, when I'm setting boundaries, they ought to have a purpose. I shouldn't be setting boundaries just because I don't want to be bothered, kind of like what we brought up earlier in the conversation, right? Or setting boundaries just because I don't want people to talk to me, right? You do have some people who are very introverted, so their boundaries are pretty much don't speak to me unless I speak to you first, right? Um, so nothing comes in and they give nothing out, right? So what is the purpose of my boundary? So when we talk about healthiness of a boundary, it should lead me to something. I'm setting this boundary to keep me from this. I'm setting a boundary to help me get here. I want to look like I want to look like this. So my boundary is I do not go to bed without doing 50 push-ups and 100 to the whatever. You know how we used to do. I'm gonna get 100 on my PT test. So every night I'm gonna do this much, this much. You know, when we were private, we try to give ourselves little things to do at night. But there's a goal to that boundary. There's a goal to what I'm setting for myself. So when we just put boundaries out there just to have them, just not to be bothered, of course, there's some things that we may become vulnerable to.
I love it. And we're going to truck on to that next question. The next question is, how can we identify where boundaries are most needed? And what are the first steps someone should take when realizing we need to establish boundaries in a particular area of our life? He said he throwing it to you.
Yeah, my bad. I'm reading it over, right? Because how can we identify where boundaries are most needed, right? Um, where's the most friction in my life? Or where am I where am I not successful at, right? The thing that I want to do or I want to accomplish or I want to get to that I never got to. Those things are just left out there, and there's a lot left to be desired. There may be some boundaries that are necessary. Um, the first step I would say is that identifying it, right? Identifying that I need to set some boundaries up. I have I have goals. I'm in school. I'm trying to learn. I'm just using it as an example, right? I'm in school and I'm trying to get this degree, this master's or whatever by this time frame. Maybe the boundaries need to be I'm not going to have phone conversations with everybody under the sun after this time. This is the time frame I'm cutting my phone off. Do not disturb D, and I'm going to study. Right? Maybe not D, but because emergency purposes. But I have to study. I have a goal that I have to set in place. So if I can't move forward in this goal, I have some boundaries I need to set up. And what those boundaries look like determines what I'm trying to do. And then my last step would be to just establish them. Don't be afraid of hurting people. If people like Coach said, if you're mad because I'm studying or because I'm watching the game, that sounds like a you problem. And not to be mean when I say that, but I I've already made it clear that this is what I'm going to do. Now, if you don't make it clear and they get mad, we didn't make it clear. Let's make it clear.
Yeah, I say take a look at a house. I will start there. Um, because I think most people have a clear understanding of what boundaries look like when it comes down to the house. Of course, you got the blueprint and all that other great stuff, but then the city comes off, and the city start marking off your property line. I cannot protect something outside of my property line. I can't put a fence around anything outside of my property line. So I should not be establishing boundaries outside of anything that's not my property. That's for starters. When I start there, that gives me a clear understanding that I cannot, should not, and will not set boundaries for anything outside of me. My boundaries start here. Then I need to understand the reason, like you heard. What is the purpose for these boundaries? Well, these boundaries are there to help me to connect with my most important relationship because I have a goal in that relationship. I am striving to be more like him. And the goal in that relationship is to sacrifice this thing here daily. So if I am going to sacrifice this thing here daily, my boundaries show me where my ego is still driving the train. Now, when I start looking at these things, I start understanding what boundaries I need to establish to bring me closer to Him. I start gauging my behavior based upon the words that I say and the evidence that my behavior is showing me in time and space. Then from there, the people that I believe that I am in relationship with, I express my boundaries with those people. But here's the problem. I stress the point that I believe I'm in relationship with because once I establish those boundaries with those people, they're going to show me whether or not they're in relationship with me at the same level or a lesser or even greater than what I believe I'm in relationship with them. Do not be surprised when you realize that you were literally the heavy lifter in this relationship and they was just along for the ride reaping the benefits of your behavior. That should not be surprising to you. Or maybe you're the person that's reaping the benefits of a relationship because all you are in that relationship is a taker. You're not giving anything. You're not serving. You're not being like that's how you view relationship. Boundaries, effectively established boundaries, will reveal that to yourself about you. It is virtually impossible for me to say that I'm in relationship with the Most High and all I am doing is taking from other people. Those two things are not synonymous, at least at the level of the awareness that we need to be at. So all of these things start factoring. And then we start establishing healthy relationships with people who not only understand boundaries, but also know how to respect boundaries. Therefore, I don't have to exist in a long, drawn out situation to where stress and anxiety presents itself. Will I have feats where I have to defend my boundaries? Absolutely. It's going to happen as part of the people process, right? So, peopling is a thing. But if I have to stand my ground at the fence line to keep showing you the fence line for an extended period of time, that is evidence that I'm not in relationship with you.
I love it. I love it. I thought you went to North Carolina there when you said feet. I'm like, you threw me for a loop right there. This is, we can go on for hours, but time is of the essence and we want to respect everyone's time. We appreciate you guys for being here and for adding to the chat. You chat is always fire. We definitely appreciate you. And Miss Lisa Keys asked, is there a difference between preference and boundaries? And I was definitely going to address that because when I seen it, I said, okay, preference and boundaries. Preference are likes and dislikes, something that you prefer. You don't have to have it, you just prefer it. As you know, likes and wants. Whereas boundaries are predetermined of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable to you. So a preference, I prefer to sit with my back to the wall. Don't have to. Now, what's acceptable, a boundary that I do have is that, it's certain things that I will do as a man. I have boundaries. I have boundaries of how I will be spoken to. I have boundaries. And so when it comes to preferences are negotiable because you don't necessarily have to have them. Whereas those boundaries that you set, it's a non-negotiable act. If you step over, it's just like if someone kicks in like somebody downstairs, they come through my door unwelcome, it's gonna be some fire coming at them. So, and that's just the boundary here. That's self-explanatory. I don't have to put it out there. You come in unwelcome in a manner that you shouldn't be accepted, there's something coming back. And the punishment for preferences is very low, while for boundaries it should be high. It should be one of those. The punishment for you overstepping a boundary should be a first-time check. The next time you have to maybe disassociate because there's no respect there for you. You got anything on that one? Okay. Nobody has. It's been a great night, another great week, and another great empowering perspectives in the book. This is high intensity when you're on this side. So, but I appreciate you guys for encouraging me along the way. And right now we're going to go into our final words, and we're going to start off with the youngest man on the panel, son of Timothy.
Right. My apologies. On this great conversation, I would say stop putting the responsibility and the weight of your burdens and your successes and the blame of your inconsistencies and non-successes on others. At the end, it's our fault. If someone else crossed boundaries that I didn't make plain, or if they crossed my boundaries, I've allowed them to. If they pulled me uh, outside of my boundaries, I've allowed them to. Right? It's my responsibility to hold my feet to the fire, to put my toes to the line, and hold my posture and stand flat-footed and declare those things that are real and that are true in my life. Right? No one else's responsibility. Now, will my brothers defend my name if they hear a lie? They might, might not. I'm pretty sure they will. But guess what? It's not their responsibility. It's my responsibility to keep my character in such a manner that when someone comes to lie on me, it'll be hard for you to believe it anyway, right? So I'm a firm believer that you didn't fail because someone crossed your line, because someone went against your boundaries. You failed because you allow it to deter you. So stand strong, love, Blessings. Peace out.
First and foremost, I want to say good job to Brother Roland. I know that it's a little different. It's a little different being in the driver's seat on a Friday night. There's a lot of moving parts, but I think he did a fantastic job. In this conversation, if you guys know me, you know boundaries is my talking point. I love talking about boundaries, um, simply because at the end of the day, most of us, most adults, don't understand boundaries, and it's very interesting the conversations that I have with people in relation to them. And so all I tend to do is ask questions. And I ask them a question about what they're trying to articulate their boundaries to be. And lo and behold, by the time I get to the second question, it crumbles. Because at the end of the day, those were never boundaries. Those were something that I put in place, and they were like traps, and you didn't even realize that they were traps. So I like the fact that Brother Gaddett went with the responsibility, because that's exactly where I was going to go. We exist in a world to where everybody feels entitled to have a thing that they don't do anything to deserve. They don't do anything to earn it. There's only one gift that matters, and unfortunately, we don't pay a lot of attention collectively in this world on that one gift, and that gift is salvation. Other than that, once we get in that relationship, there's a lot of work that must be done. It's my responsibility to do my own work. Once I say, well, you did this and you did that to me, now we need to understand exactly what we're talking about. There are instances, I'm just being transparent, there are instances when a person does a thing to you. But why don't I be an adult and have the adult conversation with that person? Because puts me in a position of power to go behind that person. I'm sorry, to go behind that person and talk about them. That's what kids do. We got to stop doing that. Here's the deal: boundaries help us to be relational by governing me first, and then I can see whether or not you're governing you. Therefore, we can now be in relationship. If you're not governing you, I don't make the decision to be in relationship with you. It's that simple. I can be cordial, I can say hi and bye and all that other great stuff, but to seek to be in relationship, I am now putting myself in a situation that is compromising not only to my own integrity, but to the one that I claim to be in relationship. And it might just be by virtue of that, I may not have the relationship with him that I think I do.
I love it. Thank you. I appreciate everything that was said right there. And I can't say anything to add to that, but when the Most High made Adam and then Eve, he placed them in a garden and he gave them responsibilities. They were in a boundary, they had parameters. Now, when sin comes, now the Most High asked Adam, who told you that you were naked? See, when you're naked, you're exposed. When you're naked, you're vulnerable. When you're naked, you know that you've done wrong and you've allowed or you've stepped over a boundary that was placed on your life. And that's how we are. We're like Adam. And the Most High didn't just kick him out of the garden and leave him helpless, but he continued to follow and continue to guide. He continued to give new sets of boundaries because now sin has entered the world, and now he knows that they have a propensity to go towards that. So now he says, okay, these are your new boundaries. If you do what I said to do my commandments, do what I said to do, blessings will come. If you do the opposite, curses will come. And life is plain and simple as that. And that's how it works out. So when you find yourself making boundaries and other people don't want to go along with your boundaries that are healthy boundaries for you, now you have to identify who they are, what they bring to the table, and the limits that now you want to place on them and how far away from you may want to place them. Because when you have people that will habitually go against what you said to do, that just stands to say that they aren't for you. And sometimes it may hurt because of the relational value that you see they bring to you. But sometimes it may be a wake-up call to that person to say, okay, I understand now that this is something that I thought was trivial, but it hurts them when I overstep. It offends them when I overstep. And that's how you deem that respect. That's how you build that it's not a selfishness, but it's something within intestinal fortitude to where now it's not a cockiness, but it's something that says, I stand on this and that's it. And they accept it or not, but you stand firm. I appreciate you guys for being here. We as a panel, we definitely love coming here each and every Friday night. And you can also see us, see Coach and Unc on Tuesdays. They come on Tuesdays with the Coach's Corner. You can see us on Fridays here. You can see us there. Join us Sunday on TikTok, 11:30. I messed up on TikTok and Coach had to let me know. And when I went to change it, TikTok was already taking it off because I had said something. They took it off the thing anyway. So, but we are a community of like-minded believers learning one another and growing with one another. So join in, and your voice, whether it's audible or via these chat rooms, is definitely needed and necessary for our growth. So we appreciate you. We love you. And we look forward to seeing you on the next go around Sunday morning, 11 o'clock on TikTok. Y'all have a good one.